let it go. Glue and paint or popcorn in hand, I'm caught between two promised lands. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are reaching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are reaching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are reaching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? Will I craft or binge tonight? flicker on the screen, it's a late night show. A spaceman lands where a strange wind blows. The black and white feels like home to me. A time machine through the static I see. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. Now I'm here with the glow in my eyes. The channel changes, but the feeling survives. The heroes are still young, but I have aged. Yet I still love planets made of paper mache. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. The reel keeps spinning, but the years are gone. The spaceman fades, but the dream lives on. Late night TV in a quiet room, but my heart still dances to the same old tune. Ooh. The clock ticks loud as the credits roll, but these memories light up my soul. A middle-aged man with a younger heart. I can't wait for the next flick to start. The clock ticks loud as the credits roll, but these memories light up my soul. A middle-aged man with a younger heart. I can't wait for the next flick to start.
There's a tank on the table, missing a wheel. A spaceship half painted, how does that feel? The pieces are scattered like a puzzle unsolved. My ambition's a crime, but I've never evolved. Glue it together, or leave it undone. These model kids laugh while I try to have fun. The instructions are cryptic, the parts are a mess. Why do I start more when I can't finish less? A pirate ship's mast is leaning to the side. A car from the 60s has no seats inside. I swore I'd complete them, I gave it my vow. But my shelf of shame's growing, it's mocking me now. Glue it together, or leave it undone. These model kids laugh while I try to have fun. The instructions are cryptic, the parts are a mess. Why do I start more when I can't finish less? I bought another kit, it's a shiny new plane, but I know the ending, it's always the same. A promise to finish, a battle to fight, but by midnight I'm cursing and calling it a night. A dragon's missing wings, a train's missing track. My glue's all dried up, there's no turning back. Still I sit at the table, a dream in my eyes. One day I'll finish, or at least I'll try.
I built a plane with my own two hands, a tiny world that I command. Wings of plastic dreams take flight, soaring high in my room tonight. Oh, DCA, you're my escape through skies of glue and endless tape. A masterpiece that knows no bounds, flying free without a sound. I painted stripes with steady care, a pilot's dream beyond compare. With every piece I shaped my pride, a journey waiting just inside. Oh, DCA, you're my escape through skies of glue and endless tape. A masterpiece that knows no bounds, flying free without a sound. Clouds of cotton in my mind, through the storm my plane will find. Every twist and every turn, a spark of life from what I've learned. Oh, DCA, you're my escape through skies of glue and endless tape. A masterpiece that knows no bounds, flying free without a sound.
I've got a bench that's sturdy and wide, my little corner where pieces collide. With glue and paint and a lot of heart, it is where I assemble my parts. My workbench is my personal throne, a place where chaos is my own. Models rise and models fall, but this old table has seen it all. Their steering parts sprinkled like fairy dust, X-Acto knife blades beginning to rust. My tweezers sing a clumsy tune, while tiny model rockets reach for the moon. My workbench is my personal throne,
and all of its chaos is my own. Models rise and models fall, but this old table has seen it all. The coffee stains tell stories untold, the battle scars of projects bold. I built a ship that couldn't float, and a car with a thumbprint from the final coat. I got shelves of dreams stacked to the sky, and a magnifying glass for my aging eye. It's not just models, it's a magic place where I can tinker at my own pace. My workbench is my personal throne, and all of its chaos is my own. Models rise and models fall, but this old table's seen it all. Their steering parts sprinkled like fairy dust, X-Acto knife blades beginning to rust. My tweezers sing a clumsy tune, while tiny model rockets reach for the moon. My workbench is my personal throne, and all of its chaos is my own. Our models rise and models fall, but this old table has seen it all. But this old table has seen it all. Coffee stains tell stories untold, the battle scars of projects bold. I built a ship that couldn't float, and a car with a thumbprint from the final coat. I got shelves of dreams stacked to the sky, and a magnifying glass for my aging eye. It's not just models, it's a magic place where I can tinker at my own pace.
Spill the black when I lean back. It looks like my desk was taken flat. Decals flying to the floor. This kit's a mess, but I'll build some more. Oops and splatter everywhere. Painted in my hair, but I don't care. Clumsy hands and crooked wings. Building chaos makes me sing. Try to fix it with a brush. Knock the jar in my panic rush. Tiny pieces lost in the rug. Found one stuck to my coffee mug. Oops and splatter everywhere. Painted in my hair, but I don't care. Clumsy hands and crooked wings. Building chaos makes me sing. Glue on the table, glue on my thumb. My masterpiece might look a bit dumb, but every mess tells a funny tale. In my kid model world, I never fail. just makes me sing.
The box is staring me right in the eye. A model kit with wings that want to fly. The couch is calling with a lazy embrace. Decisions, decisions, I'm stuck in this place. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? Instructions whisper, take me slow, but the TV's glow says, let it go. Glue and paint or popcorn in hand, I'm caught between two promised lands. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? Will I craft or binge tonight? picture on the screen, it's a late night show. A spaceman lands where a strange wind blows. The black and white feels like home to me. A time machine through the static I see. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. Now I'm here with the glow in my eyes. The channel changes, but the feeling survives. The heroes are still young, but I have aged. Yet I still love planets made of paper mache. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. The reel keeps spinning, but the years are gone. The space.
Okay, the audio's hot, guys. They're hearing everything we're saying now.
Oh, okay, forget it.
Save it for the after show. Let me find the right camera.
No,
What do you mean after show?
That wasn't what I was going to say.
There is no after show. You leave. You go eat or you do something.
Oh, I'm
right
sorry. That
after
whole
it's
wanting to
over.
feed myself thing. Where's my other camera at? Intro, audio.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
Welcome to the dark
welcome
side.
to another action-packed Max's Models live stream, live from, let's see,
There we go.
Delaware, Florida, and somewhere in Upper Florida.
And
Upper
organized,
Florida.
As always.
Okay. I have two intros here. What happened? The intro's supposed to be off. Let's see. What's rolling in the background? Oh, hold on.
There's nothing running. It's all
I
black.
tried something new,
Black.
which a person should never do. Okay.
There we
down.
go. Okay, we got a 5x5. That's a good sign.
The dark side.
Hold on. When I reduce these screens, half my controls go away. Ha-ha!
I see you
There we are.
I see you finally straightened out your Max's models playing in the background.
Yeah, I had to change the batteries. And,
Oh.
whew, let me turn the fan on here. It's 90
There we
degrees
go,
outside, and
back
I've
to
been
black.
running around.
Wait for
Okay.
Amy Winehouse any minute.
What?
This is where Max wakes or comes back online with a knife in his back.
Ah! Who done it?
Ah!
All righty. Enough of this. Let's get. We're on the air, live with Max's Models, with Ken and Steve on board. And we're doing it Friday night because tomorrow I'll be over at Ken's partying for his... do you want me to tell him how old you are, Ken? Is it a state secret?
Sure. I'm glad I made it this far.
Yeah, the big 7-0. And he hit 70. Well, not yet. You still got to make it till tomorrow, John Wick.
Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock.
All right. Well, first off, thanks everybody for coming out. Okay, so all kinds of stuff to talk about tonight. And as I was walking in, my wife got the decals for the C-57D just showed up.
Chuck said, "Cool, a murder mystery."
Yeah, well, murder someone else, okay?
Oh, that's what he's doing to the channel right now.
Everyone's a critic. Okay, so you guys know we're working on the C-57D, and I did the big experiment on the different putties. And I thought we would talk about the results of said experimentation as it resulted in some stuff. Okay, so For starters, let's start off with the Milliput. Now, I had never used Milliput before. For those who don't know, Milliput comes in two parts, and
It's a little dog, right?
yes, that's the Milliput.
I thought it was a really short golfing club.
That's a mini putt. Which,
There he goes again. Okay, back to the model.
Milliput. Milliput is a two-part epoxy, and you when you buy it, by the way, it ain't cheap either. And this is the regular superfine white. They also have a gray one, which you have to be careful when you mix it because the colors are the same. They tell you to knead it for 7 minutes, and it should be one color, and it pretty much is. It's white. But here's the thing about Milliput. First off, I didn't even make that much. I cut off less than an inch, and man, as big as that ship is, I had plenty left over. So I put it in the freezer because they say if you put unused Milliput in the freezer, it won't harden. You can bring it out, thaw it, and still use it. And as expensive as it is, I wasn't throwing any away. But I found it a little difficult to work with. Not only you have to knead it for 7 minutes, like you're making biscuits, but it's very heavy. It's like a really like clay, and getting it down into the recesses was a bit of a challenge. When it hardened, and boy, when it hardens, it's like rock. I found it kind of hard to sand down. So I can see where Milliput would be very popular for certain things, especially if you want to add some mass or rigidity to a model. But first off, I put way too much on there. Now, I was able to sand it down, but I'm not kidding, it was a challenge. And I know a lot of guys are big fans of it, and I can see I can see why. By the way, when you get the stuff, you have to kind of shave off the outside of the sticks because apparently it hardens a little on the outside, and so a little of it goes to waste, but not too much. But the point I'm driving at is that it's really good for filling in some place where you need some structure or something. By the way, you can make stuff out of it. Use it like a molding clay. The stuff that was, I shaped a little bit of it and it came out rock hard, so it's still a resin. So I was very happy with it once I got it filed down. Okay, whoever's doing that, stop doing that. But somebody's breathing real heavy into their microphone. But anyway,
I didn't know that Sluggo was online.
That's just me blowing on my dinner. Okay. I'll stop doing that. Sorry.
But you can thin it a little bit though, which is nice. But it's really it's good stuff, but it's going to take some practice to get with it. I know some guys like to use it like those Aurora kits where the wings go in, but they don't really grab onto anything and have the big gaps. I can certainly see it being really good there. Now, one thing I had done that made life hard on myself, as you guys remember, I put this together with Gorilla Glue and tried to use that thick Gorilla Glue as a gap seal. And so there wasn't a lot of space for the Milliput to get down in there. And but anyway, trim it off as much as you can before it hardens. Use as little as you can. So when you start sanding down, because it's a lot of work. But it did come out okay, and I'm sure I'll use it again in the future for certain other things. Now, one thing that happened with the Milliput was I put the Milliput when I got one of them done. I had so much left over. I said, "Hey, I bet I can do the next that uncommitted scene with it." Well, it was only about 10 minutes old, but it had already started to set just a little bit, and when I put it in, I couldn't really get it to I'm sorry, that's not the Milliput. I'm thinking about the Easy Epoxy, which is the next one we're going to talk about, the Easy Epoxy. And the Easy Epoxy has a much faster working time than the Milliput. And when I put and the nice thing about that Easy Epoxy is The stuff comes with in a tube. So I mean, it's got the two components wrapped around each other, kind of like an eclair. But so you just cut a piece off and start kneading it, and it kneads up in just a couple of minutes. But you only have about 5 minutes of working time before it starts to get hard on you. Before it starts to firm up. I was able to get the first one smeared in pretty good, but the second one I had a lot more trouble. It was only about 5 minutes old, and I had a lot more trouble getting it to squish down into the seam. And the first row of stuff that I laid down, the one that just says Easy Epoxy Deluxe, worked out okay. But the one that said 5 minutes later, that was 5 minutes old when I put it in there. And even though I was able to get it in, the next day when I tried to shave it, it just popped off. I mean, it literally just popped right out. Again, those seams were mostly filled. I really used too much in there. This stuff does not work like Tamiya putty or anything, seal it. You have a short work time with it. You need to get it in and try not to use any more than you need, because it's like rock. It's kind of hard to sand down. So just be forewarned. Cut off a little piece, knead it up, and get it where you need it. Wipe it off, and then if you need more, just go knead up another piece. But that one I wasn't even able to actually use. I wound up popping the whole thing out and replacing it with Tamiya. So the Easy Epoxy, probably not the best thing for trying to seam up something like this. But again, if you do get it in there, like I said on the fresh one, it actually worked out okay. But once I got a few minutes old, that was all she wrote. And it's, I mean, all of these things only have a limited work time with them, but I was, I don't want to say I wasn't impressed. The thing has some real merits, just like the Milliput. It's just not something I was used to using, and it's a little less forgiving. And a little of that stuff goes a lot further than it seems like. And the fact that those seams were mostly filled already just made this not the best medium. What this stuff and the Milliput are good for is when you have to build up a step, like the seams don't line up. The stuff's thick enough that you troll it on, and it'll fill that gap in solidly. It doesn't tend to crack like plastic putty does. Obviously, the Tamiya White, which I think is a little bit finer than the regular Tamiya Basic, it spread on like butter. It was very easy to apply and sand down and everything. There's a reason Tamiya products have a good reputation, and really not a whole lot to report there. And then, of course, the Tamiya Basic, which worked just as well. And there wasn't, again, it trolled on without any problem, sanded down nicely. It actually filled in a little bit of a step there. And, I mean, there's a lot of sanding and a lot of, priming and sanding and here, but you can see it finally kind of sealed it up decently. This ship is a real nightmare. I mean, the people who've done really professional jobs with this ship usually are using car body repair stuff and pad sanders. It's that big and that difficult. Everybody I know who's built them in their workshops that's just used regular model stuff, at some point the seams show to some degree. It's hard to get the pieces to line up correctly without creating steps. And of course, being a spacecraft, it's supposed to have that smooth finish. And
So you used how many different types of putty?
5
so far?
5.
5.
And
so this weighs like 45 pounds now.
Yeah. Now that leaves the last one, which was the plastic putty. The Perfect Plastic Deluxe is perfect plastic. Now the problem with perfect plastic's very easy to work with. Its problem is it breaks easily if you move the seam, or squeeze the item, it'll crack real easily. And this spaceship, as big as this disc is, there's going to be some warp. If you're trying to do like a professional job of this ship, you're going to probably have, I'll talk about that later. I've got some ideas on if I was to do another one of these, like that had to be super perfect, like I was going to go to competition with it. I have a few ideas, but it's way, and I'm not knocking the kit. I just think making this kit in 1/72 scale with the pizza section here, it's a very simple kit as far as the outside goes, and the fit's okay-ish. The problem obviously is the seams, which are just huge, just given the size of the model. And without any interior, it has interior structure at the inside of the circle, you can see it. What it doesn't have is any support midway. So those things can still flex. And basically, it needs some wedges in there to give it some structure, or some pieces that hold the middle in place. Like it just doesn't have them. But the perfect putty was easy to work with, and it's water soluble. So it's okay. But I found that I had a lot of issues with the bottom, which is already messed up because of the work I did the other time. It looked like it was okay from a distance. I go out and put the silver paint on it. All the blemishes really, 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 really showed. So I have, and then I made a discovery that was a little surprising. I resanded the bottom, and when I put the Tamiya putty over that Krylon paint, the putty, the Tamiya white and gray both worked like a solvent. And I put some of it on there. When I went over it with my finger to troll it in, it just all the paint came up on my finger. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it went right through it like Godzilla through Tokyo. And that was interesting. Of course, that's Krylon paint. It wasn't really made to be used with these products, and I'd given it overnight to dry, so it wasn't a matter of it being not hardened or anything or gassed out. It just, whatever's in that Tamiya putty works as a solvent for that kind of paint. But, so I wound up completely, after everything dried and hardened and I sanded it down, I wound up completely repriming the bottom. And one thing, though, is that it did come out looking a little bit better. The seams aren't quite as... I mean, they're noticeable. It's virtually impossible to hide these things. But from a distance, they're okay. But you get up close and it starts to show. And I think that's just... I'll keep grinding away on it for a while. But after a while, you just kind of burn out on the... like, good God, And I realized the late great Trek Works had said that he did car detailing, car work, body work on cars, and he had all the tools and everything. He said he still took him 5 hours using some kind of car bondo kind of stuff, and but I'm not going to get that into it. And anyway, that was my adventure so far on all that, and it has proven itself quite the chore. I mean, I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and it hasn't let me down. But,
did not surprise you.
No, it absolutely did not surprise me. And I'll be honest, there's something to be said for when it starts to look a little better. You start feeling like, hey, this is okay, because I'm actually doing some real work here, and doing some real modeling and everything.
Making progress.
Yeah, and every time I scrape it down and everything, it comes out looking a little bit better, and I'm kind of like, there's a little pride in seeing your work start to pay off a little bit. But you're right, though, Steve. I agree. That aluminum paint from Krylon that I used, it just doesn't look right. And so I've got the whole thing reprimed and on top, and I need to reprime the bottom, but the but the long and the short of it is that I'm going to wind up using Tamiya. I'm going to probably use about 6 or 8 cans of Tamiya aluminum, gloss aluminum to make the model, because that's what it needs to be. That's the only thing that really looks right.
Well, it's a process.
It is, and I wanted to run this experiment too.
Right. Because you were trying to see what was going to work, and you took a bunch of different mediums and saw what the result was, and,
Trial and error.
The paint reacted with it.
Well, if I had to pick what you might call a winner, it would be for this job, it would be the Tamiya putties. The Milliput is probably better for filling, the steps, but Milliput's clearly going to take some practice. It's harder to work with, and the Tamiya stuff is just really easy. But the plastic putty, it's real easy to work with, but it cracks so easily. I might use it to fill in little holes and stuff. It's really great for that, and it sands down quickly. But the idea of using it on the big seams that are going to flex, that would cause it to crack, probably not. I don't think it would be the right one for that. In fact, I don't really think there's any one putty that would be good for the whole model. I would say Milliput on the big steps, Tamiya gray basic on the seams, and then maybe use it, or the plastic, perfect plastic for little stuff where there's not going to be flex, because it sands down so easily. And of course, the big trick is sanding it down where the whole thing's going to be smooth. And that is, I'm using as heavy as 80 grit sandpaper, and it's stuff's still resistant. Good God, people, is this one step away from a Dremel. But it is what it is. And of course, again, the physical size, I don't think most of us are used to build models this big. This thing's the size of a studio prop. Now, while we're on that, I would like to talk about things I would do if I was selling this kit to make it better. All right? Now, one thing I do like about the kit is that there's a lip on the top. The lower sections go into the top. You don't have a seam around the edge. I think that's a very good thing. It saves you a lot of work. The seam is on the bottom, and it goes circumferential. Goes around the whole thing. But okay, one of you guys is making a bunch of background noise. You're scratching around or you're doing something. It's really easy to seal up that gap. It's a lot easier than doing one on the end that would be staring right at you all the way on the rocket. Obviously, warping and potato chipping is a big problem. I've had people tell me they've gone so far as to have people cut them a metal ring to put in there to stiffen it. And Trek Works used wood. And that's some pretty hardcore stuff. So what this kit needs that it doesn't have is some way of stiffening it where it doesn't potato chip. And it needs, I guess you would call them flanges? Not flanges. They'd be like sections that go into about midway all the way around in each section to provide rigidity to the bowed out section of the body of the thing, the saucer section, so that it can't warp so easily. And it also, as you guys probably know, that it's got the top dome is about 1 inch too small in diameter. Speaking of which, Ken, you haven't had a chance to 3D print that thing yet, have you? Not yet. Okay.
I have to mute because I'm chewing on dinner and I didn't want to bother you.
Oh, well, you can always mute your mic and come back when you're done. I didn't know we caught you at dinner time, but not that would have slowed me up, but it's not that I'm inconsiderate. I just don't care. But the kit is pretty straightforward, and it's got a nicely detailed interior. And there's a ton of reference sources, which, by the way, do not agree on which walls are supposed to be which color. So I've been using screen grabs from the movie. But it has 2 red walls upstairs, and everything else is pretty much beige. The floor is brown. Then you have those 3 concentric rings, which they did not bother to send you decals for. And Ken and I were just debating on using a compass to make a stencil, but I have, because the things I had, the circle cutters I have, the arms are too long, because they're not made to go, they're made to like on a flat open surface. And I could probably, if I could find an old school compass with a blade, I could probably do it, but I think it's going to be easier just to make decals. Plus, you're not really going to be able to see it that well. So it's, but the inside, it isn't per, I just, like I say, I just got the decals. So it's mostly black, red, brown, beige, and aluminum colors, the bulk. The chairs are all aluminum. What?
I know, I saw it.
Garfield said, any truth to the rumor that Max will pop out of a cake at Ken's birthday party? No, that's not. It's illegal in the state of Florida for Max to do that.
I don't think they make cakes that big. I might eat my way out of one, but if I come popping out of a cake at somebody's birthday party, I have made a bad decision somewhere in life.
And so have they for letting you do it.
Yeah. But
Especially if you're topless.
Don't even go there.
mass blinding takes place. People found staggering down the street, their eyes bleeding, retinas burned out, screaming, "Oh my God, what was that?" Meg, can you imagine that as the last thing you ever saw in this life? Oh my gosh. That's worse than looking in the eye. That's worse than looking at John Wick.
As you ran out of the street and the car ran over you.
And people run down the street. There is a Baba Yaga. There is a Baba Yaga. Chris, that is just sick. You guys have definitely got to quit inhaling the fumes.
Okay. It just popped up.
No moves. Herb.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
We gotta. No, don't talk about this anymore. I don't want to ruin my party.
Ken's eating dinner, guys. or he was.
Popping fresh. Okay.
Liquid resin could work. Actually, it could, but just remember what you pour in, you got to sand down. The biggest problem with this kit is getting the edges of the seams to mate all the way up. And I have a cunning plan, as Baldrick would say, if I ever do this kit again. Put the pieces together, only 2 at a time, and make sure they're perfectly aligned. Clamp them down and get as good of a seal as you can. And just let it sit overnight. Come back the next day. Then do just the 2 of the bigger pieces together. Same thing. Let it perfectly harden into place. Then insert the last one. And, do the same thing. You got to go slow and make sure those seams are perfectly aligned as it hardens. You do that, you can save yourself a lot of grief later on. I thought I'd done that, but a couple of them turned out to be out of alignment. I don't know if they drifted during the drying process or I just never had them lined up properly to begin with. I actually managed to cut the Gorilla Glue out of one of them and realign it and reglue it, but that's not hard intellectually. It's just a hard physical thing to do. Partly the sizes, getting clamps that'll hold on to that stuff, but it's worth doing. What?
I'm reading one of the comments. It says, Erica Oleniak must not be available for Ken's birthday party cake.
Who?
If she was, I would make the trip.
That would be worth it, huh?
Yeah.
Who are we talking about?
Did you ever see, what was the Steven Seagal movie on the Under Siege?
Oh, Under Siege. Okay, yeah.
Who's the one who popped out of the cake?
Yeah, I don't do guns and I don't date musicians.
You're in the wrong place.
It sounds like the photos from Ken's party will be very interesting. Like the movie The Hangover.
It's like the last thing, I think the last line of the movie, he tells her, the next thing I know, you'll be dating musicians. But I never really saw her in anything after that. Well,
Didn't have to.
Saw
The,
everything.
She was on Baywatch.
oh, was she? I never watched
Yeah.
Baywatch. But to me, shows like that were just.
You don't watch Baywatch anyway. You kind of experience it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure you have a bouncy couch.
back to our raison d'etre. So, one idea I had is if someone could make a smooth master, if they could vacuum form a one-piece top shell. That way, when we get the model, instead of going through all this sanding, just drop the vac piece on top of it, and there it is, nice smooth capsule. But
You probably, if you didn't fill in the seams, they'll get the seams to come through in the mat.
no, you would have to make a master that was perfect. The thing is, the shape of the ship
Right.
wouldn't really be. You know, this thing was probably made the same way they made the saucer section for the Enterprise. If you guys have ever seen how the original model was made, it was made the way you would build a wooden ship. You know, they made identical formers, put them in a circle, and then put the wood on and shaved it down and sanded it and everything. And Dayton, the guy who built it, you know, he ran a prop shop, so they had all the tools and everything. And they used Bondo or whatever else they needed to get it all smoothed out, and then used, I think it was painted with car paint. The stuff I've seen from where they were at the Smithsonian when they were refurbishing it, I mean, that paint on there looked like that old stuff they used to put on cars that you had to get off with a freaking blowtorch.
Maybe you should have built maybe a jig or something that would hold the pieces in the correct position as you glued it together.
You are not far from inland. Not sure what that.
Or you're not far inland, not from inland.
No, we're.
Beach.
The St. Johns River is 2 minutes that way, and the beach is 20 minutes that way. Turn the fan off. I've cooled down now.
But he never goes there.
Yeah, Ken. I wonder why. Maybe it's this vampire skin I've got. Oh, dude, I get a sunburn in front of a microwave, but and I'm a native Floridian, but my mom and dad are obviously North European extraction. But the somebody had also recommended, it's another thing you can do when you build this kit, you can always shim it, with the stock styrene and shave it down, cut a piece to, and that's another way to fill in. You're still probably going to need some putty or something to make it smooth, but I've been sanding and wet sanding and everything else, and it is starting to show a little bit. The place where I really kind of screwed the pooch. Why is
You're
the
out of
camera?
focus.
I know the camera just did that. I don't.
Look at my eyes again. It's all blurry. That's a super peasy outfit.
What the heck happened with the camera? I didn't touch anything. Huh? Let me see if I can get it to focus on this, and then.
It's the effects of cough syrup.
So this is what it feels like to be high. Oh, what the heck? Okay, well, let me turn the camera, recycle the camera, and see if that
Nope,
helps.
that didn't work.
Oh, okay, it just refocused. It'll be a few seconds before you guys see it, but it's
Now you got a
We'll take-
fingerprint on it.
and this is odd because it's showing in focus on my monitor. There it goes. Now it's back.
Yep, you're good
I
now.
have no idea what it just.
There it is now.
This is why I miss things like, I don't know, manual focus. That's one of the reasons I have a 35 millimeter DSLR, so I can still take manually focused pictures if I want to. Anyway.
Yeah, Don Lee says, I saw this movie, The Blur Max.
The blab. Hey, you know what? We should have just told everybody, we're talking about everything's perfectly in focus. What have you guys been drinking?
We control
The camera's had enough of Max, that may be. I would, if I was going to manufacture this kit, I would seriously consider not only some additional structure for the inside, and they give you some, but just not enough of those mid sections. And all it would take is some pieces just to go in there to, spruce them up. But what you might also consider doing is maybe putting some circular pieces in there, just to just to give it some structural rigidity, and because it could be a nice looking model. And I've seen, I don't think anybody's made a better one than Trek Works, but God, the guy put so much into it. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you could make pieces to go in there. It wouldn't be that hard. Just, fit a couple of pieces, wedge some clay in there to get your measurements, take it out, and cut it out of some styrene supports or something. It wouldn't be that hard to do. There goes the argument that robot driverless cars will be safer because all power. Hey, I wonder, does the self-driving car automatically, when you're like in Manhattan, does it automatically give other self-driving cars the New York salute?
I don't have to get enough of them to try.
Does it pop up a middle finger and go, hey? I remember we were outside the hobby shop in Maryland. That guy cut you off in the parking lot. You're yelling at him like, careful, this is Maryland. You may be packing. But, Gary X, what did they do for Plan 9 from outer space? They just used the little Lindbergh flying saucers and took the motors off of them and sprayed them in silver. I finally sat down and watched Plan 9 from outer space, and I have to admit it did live down to expectations. It was so bad. But
science fiction on a budget.
well, you know what? What's sad is I've seen some stuff on YouTube made by total amateurs that's better than some of the crap I've seen coming out of Hollywood. And of course, on no budget. Of course, computers, desktop publishing, video cameras, cell phone, all this stuff has really changed the face of media. Now with AI, all that music you heard was AI generated. Well, I wrote the lyrics, but and told it what kind of music I wanted, so it's not completely AI generated. But AI was a big help in getting it done in a timely fashion. Bender the cab driver.
Super BLC says, just now you watched it?
No, I watched it about 15 years ago. And I was like, wow, they weren't kidding. This movie really is as bad as they said. But you got to give old Ed Wood credit. He was doing indie films back when that was hardly even a thing.
Well, the best was that Lugosi died like the first day of shooting, and then they replaced him with Ed Wood's dentist.
Yeah, and he
was about a foot taller.
I love I have to admit, I really love that movie Ed Wood with Johnny Depp. I don't know. I don't know how accurate it was, but what's his name? Martin Landau was just funny as hell in that movie, and
it was good.
Freezing my ass off, yeah. I made movies with 8mm cameras when I was a kid, and I swear they were as good as Plan 9. My flying saucer was an upside down trumpet or cornet key that I hung with fishing wire, and but
whatever works.
Hey, found a couple of plumbing fixtures and made a spacecraft out of them. I was kit bashing without the kits. Yeah, I went to a hardware store. I'd try to make things out of all the plumbing supplies. Oh, what is that? Oh, that's a spaceship. That's an airplane or whatever. A sawhorse became an airplane or a horse. It's whatever your imagination needed it to be. Max, move the fishbowl. Move the fishbowl?
You want a fishbowl?
No, I don't.
Everybody's saying how Martin Landau played with Ozzy and won an Academy Award doing it.
I thought he got the Academy Award for, what was it, Intersection, or whatever the name of that movie was.
He got one for Ed Wood.
Well, he was great in that movie. Landau really got most of his accomplishments later in life.
Well, here's an interesting fact. He was one of the people that were tabbed to play Spock.
I could easily see him in that role. Easily.
And he just didn't get it. It went to Nimoy, but he was one of the picks.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, I'm not sure, but I think the guy that played Spock's father, Mark Leonard, I think he might have also been one that was in contention, but I could be wrong about that.
It was two other people. It was Landau, and I forget who the other one was. But the other one was not like somebody that you would have said, "Oh yeah, that would have been a good fit." I was reading this the other day. It popped up on one of the internet things.
You know, I think one of the reasons people are so interested in the trivia from these old movies, same reason we're in the history of old models, it's just because in some ways they just had so much more character than some of the modern stuff. You know, my wife and I just binged watched the John Wick movies, and I mean, they're fun, they're fantasy, which by the way are generally rated in popularity in complete reverse order. The fourth one is the most popular, the third one the second, and the first one that started all is actually the lowest rated, even though it's still highly rated. Oh yeah, DeForest Kelley was considered for Spock. And,
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors that, in fact, I think in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think Cordelia actually, Charisma Carpenter actually auditioned to be Buffy, I think. And Buffy was, what's her name that played Buffy was actually auditioning for Cordelia, I believe. I may have that wrong.
Here we go. George Lindsay, who played Goober in the Andy Griffith Show, was reportedly initially Roddenberry's first choice, but he
What?
declined the part. DeForest Kelley was also considered for Spock, and Martin Landau was the other one who turned it down.
Okay.
But they're wishing they hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark Leonard's played everything. In fact, the reason they had Mark Leonard in the playing the Klingon in the opening scene of the original Star Trek The Motion Picture, apparently the fandom demanded that he be in the movie. And they were like, well, we don't have a role for him. And somebody's, well, you know, put him in Klingon makeup and no one will know. I was like, oh, okay. So that's how they got him. They backdoored him into the movie to keep the fans happy. That was pure fan service. And there so goes the stories, if you believe what you read in Starlog or whatever that magazine was. Back when people bought and read magazines. And
I bought some of those.
these paper things.
I don't know what happened to them, but I bought some of them. This is a good magazine, too.
By the way, a Glue Trooper sent me some pictures from a magazine that he found from like 83 or 84. I think it was Fine Scale Model, where somebody had made the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, but they'd scratch built it. And they carved the Wiener part out of wood and started using carb, made the chassis out of, stock sprue and everything, and just built a Wienermobile. I admire people who can do that level of kit bashing. So that's the thing, like the modeling muse that drives me off the wall. He makes all these incredible things that I struggle with, and he does it all sitting at his table without even making a mess, and it looks like he's making a cup of tea. It's just so easy, and I'm like, just not fair. I did not get the modeling gene. I got the desire to build models, just not the skill set. And
Remember, it's not a sprint.
that's true. But I'm one of those guys that I've got to see progress, or otherwise I start, kind of losing interest, which is not a good quality in a model builder. And one of the pictures he sent me with all that stuff was this tool a guy made for making 1/800 scale railings for model ships. And I was like, okay, that's taking model building to one heck of a... Let me see if I can find that picture real quick. But I'm like, seriously, the guy...
Thankful said, well, Putty the Star Trek tangent.
But I was like, I mean, you got to respect the skill set behind that, but and the commitment. But I was like, you're making railings for ships on this tiny scale, and let's see. Yeah, here it is. Okay, this was.
Here's hope for you, Max.
This came from
Maybe
Bill
someday
Campbell.
You can buy a SpaceX robot and have him build models for you.
Yeah, Ken. They call those die cast. Copy image. Let me just save this real quick. Edit, paste, crop, file, save as, JPEG. Gotta go with all these hoops. Okay, let me bring that picture up for you. Image. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so this is from like a 1983 fine scale modeler. This is how he made the Wienermobile, and scratch built. I am genuinely, just impressed by that. Let me see if I can find that other picture.
I learned years ago that there's a huge competition for who gets to drive that thing. They're only
Well, there's
they only
more
do it
than
for
one
a
of them,
year.
Ken.
They get college students.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to apply, and then they go through a selection process, and it's like 2 per Wienermobile, and each one gets there's 6 of them, and each one gets 1/6 of the country.
Can you imagine putting that on your resume? Yeah, I was the driver for the Wienermobile.
Hey, that may actually help out. I mean, everybody can identify with it, so
I'd love to have that job.
I would put it on there in a heartbeat. Okay.
I'd love to do that.
Okay, here's another butte for you. I just got it downloaded. Let me just.
And no model kit company has ever made a model of the Wienermobile.
Well, probably can't
Which I
get
would
the
think
rights
would be
to it.
natural.
I remember reading an article many years ago that Car and Driver, I think it was Car and Driver, did a review on the Wienermobile.
Uh-huh.
Test.
Yeah, doing a road test, how well it handled, how fast it took off, its top speed, which I think was like 63 miles an hour or something.
Yeah.
Okay, this gentleman made this so he could make railings for a 1/800 scale submarine.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, that is, I don't even know how it works, but looks like kind of like guitar string based stuff. But you got to be impressed by the fact that he clearly had to invent that, because I don't think it's anything anybody made. But, I'll whine about rigging a biplane. 1/800 scale railings for model subs, handmade. I'm not sure when this goes from hobby to psychosis.
It all depends on how dedicated you are and how badly you want it to be cool.
Says the man who
And
has
how much
yet.
time we got.
Says the man who has yet to make my, 10-inch fishbowl.
Oh,
You sent me that friggin' file yesterday, and you want it done already?
Have we met?
Just shot across the bow, Ken.
No, I.
Hey, I'm in the process of printing something up. By the way, check your email. There's some pictures I just sent you a few minutes ago of something I think you'd be interested in.
Oh, by the way, just never mind. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, the Piaggio. Or not?
Oh,
Not Piaggio. The
Bugatti.
Bugatti. Thank you. The one airplane. Did you just print that?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, I bought it at the same time that I bought your Navajo.
Yeah, you've always had well, you're not the only one. I'd say you've had a fascination with that airplane. I think we all have.
It's a cool looking airplane, and on top of it, it was designed before World War II.
I know. I'm gonna pop the picture up here.
It's like somebody went back in time and said, "Hey, this would be a really cool airplane to make. You could do all these design features and."
Well, I think what it is since he was essentially a car designer, he had no preconceptions about aircraft design, so he was willing to work from a completely blank slate. And where did I send the picture?
Well, considering what they were working on at the time, this is years ahead of what was going on at that time. It's a shame that the one that they built ended
Yeah,
up crashing,
and it was the
the
last
guy who
flight
built
too.
it dying.
Yeah, and it was going to be the last flight. They were retiring it after that, or putting it in a museum, and that's
Yeah,
not.
they were going to donate it. You can actually see the original airplane. I think it's on display at the Oshkosh Museum.
I didn't know the original even still existed.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. Okay. Let me just add this real quick.
No, I haven't glued the pieces together. I just laid them together so you can see what the basic shape and the size of the thing's going to look like.
Now, to understand, guys, for those who are unfamiliar with this aircraft, it had contra-rotating props, but it did that by having two different engines and two different shafts, one on each side. And
Yeah, the drive shaft actually went down besides the pilot.
and very tight inside. Pilot was in a basically reclined position for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
and
Had a huge canopy on it.
they also had the two engines that were in back behind the pilot. The replica had Subarus, and I think it was two engines, and was it one engine or two?
Two.
And I guess I don't know if the guy
Well,
lost one of the engines or both of them on the replica, but
the replica had two engines as well, but they weren't quite as powerful as the ones
yeah,
that
they were
had put in.
Subaru engines. I remember that. I'm pretty sure they were Subarus. But I don't know what happened that he lost power and crashed. If he lost it on both engines, or if it was the props, or what it was. But real tragedy, and But Bugatti actually hid the thing during the war. He didn't want the Germans to find it and get any technology out of it.
Mm-hmm.
People love to make that model and put it in Italian or RAF markings, which does look cool. But
There you go.
You realize that airplane was flying when a lot of the world's fighter planes were still biplanes.
Yep.
And
Yes. The tail was a Y shape actually,
yeah,
and the rudder was on the bottom.
the
tail wheel was at the bottom of the rudder.
And a shaft came out each side and went to, I believe, an independent planetary gear. One engine turned one prop and one turned the other. It was a truly unique design. By the way, unique means one of a kind. So there is no very unique. You're unique or you're not. It's like being pregnant. You're pregnant or you're not. And this airplane definitely qualified as unique. I don't know, except for using wings and propellers, I don't know of any technology even borrowed from other designs. But it was a Bugatti, and like I say, since he was not an airplane designer but was a car designer, he had no preconceived notion, so he was willing to try things that other people probably weren't too thrilled to try because, well, we've got a system that works, or no, that won't work, or whatever. And it's like Glock. The famous Glock 17 was the first gun he ever designed, and he went around and looked at the features of all these guns that he thought were good and just kind of combined them into one. And they call it the Toyota Corolla of handguns because it's very ordinary and it has no soul, but it works. And
Yes, it was a forward swept wing, something that nobody else had done at that time, and it has some really good stall characteristics. He did have an aircraft architect helping him design the airplane. He wasn't doing it all on his own. He had somebody who knew about how to build an airplane.
Oh yeah. But you wouldn't have gotten a lot of those design ideas past a lot of the more conservative aircraft manufacturers. And
No, I mean, if you look at it real close, you can't really see it in the picture, but the air intakes were on the leading edge of the elevators to reduce drag.
yeah, What, we're going to put them in the tail? You can't do that? Why can't? Why not? Because it hasn't been done. So, it cracks me up as an airplane designer in the 1930s saying it's never been done before. And I'm thinking, you do realize we first flew an airplane in 1903. It's now 1935. The first airplane flew 32 years ago. There's a lot we haven't done before. In fact, we haven't done most things before. But, well, you have the same thing with car companies and kit model companies and gun makers and tractor makers. They don't want to stray from their comfort zone. I mean, Steve, what car companies, how many car companies do we know that probably went out of business because they just stayed too conservative? They didn't follow changes and trends.
Oh, most, just about all of them. I mean, hundreds. There were so many car companies at one point, and they're all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw that last night on TV. Yeah, there were like 230 some odd car manufacturers in the United States.
Well, don't forget, Ken, we didn't have interstate systems or much of a road network. Most cars were bought and used locally, regionally. So it wasn't like today where you put it on a car carrier and had it moved across country. I imagine if you lived up in New York or wherever, you might have had a Rickenbacker or a Porter. And I'm from Indianapolis, so I drive as a Rickenbacker.
Nathan brings up an interesting point here, so that for the first 100,000 years of human existence, we could barely keep yourself alive past the age 30.
Yeah.
And in less than 100 years, we're flying. In less than 100, and in 60 years, we went from the Wright Flyer to landing on the moon.
Well, what's happened is we hit the asymptote in aviation, which is, the mathematical formula, things climb up and they flatten off to hit the asymptote. In 1957, the Boeing Dash 80, later the 707, was being sold to commercial airlines, and by 1958 it was in service. All right? So when cars still had tail fins, when the 57 Chevy was being sold off the lot, the 707 was making its first airline flights. Jet airlines today, although they make less noise and burn less gas, they don't go any faster. We've hit the asymptote on performance.
There's a physics reason for that.
Right. But what I'm saying is that technology in aviation increased once the step of figuring out how to get in the air was figured out. Then it was just a matter of increasing by degrees, but it happened very rapidly because, to be honest, first off, a lot of effort was put into it, but also when you get right down to it, in a lot of ways, a lot of the advances in aviation were low-hanging fruit. When it was just a matter of getting bigger engines and stronger airframes. And with people now dedicated to the cause and money being put in, that's where the research money went. Where the research money goes is where you get your advancemance. The tanks were the same way.
An interesting point that I'd like to elaborate on. The aviation airframes expanded with the expansion of more and more reliable and more powerful engines.
There's always in the horsepower race and the airframe race, it's who gets out ahead of who. And for a while, the engines were producing more power than the airframes could handle, which pushed airframe advancement. And it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Okay, we're going to make a better engine for this airframe. When we make a better engine, I'll make a better airframe. Well, then I'll make a better engine, and so on and so on and so forth. And by the way, gas turbine jet technology had been known about since the early 30s. But there were a lot of technologies that we think of as breakthroughs that had actually been around for some time. Anthony Fokker is always people talk about how, he gave the Germans an advantage when he invented the interrupter gear. Anthony Fokker didn't invent the interrupter gear that allows you to fire the machine guns through a spinning propeller without hitting it. He didn't invent that, he bought it. Somebody else invented it, he bought it from him and took credit for it because he was, it's business, man. You got to self-promote. But Whittle and von Ohain both had the same idea at the same time. That's and they did not talk to each other, from my understanding, or even know about each other. So that's one of those times where we wound up with parallel development. But turbines were already understood. They'd had turbine engines in ships for some time. You think of a ship having the big pistons, But there had been turbine drives in ships since, I want to say, about 1918 or 1922. So the concept of turbine technology was known. It was just finally applied, a workable engine was made. The temperatures and everything they were dealing with was all new. They had to come up with new exotic metals. But everybody knew. They knew early on the propellers had a hard limitation, because once the tip of a prop goes supersonic, you got problems. Thunder Screech, that loud-ass F-84, the gigantic three-bladed prop that they were trying to basically make a supersonic turboprop with. The noise was so loud it made people sick if they got near it while it was running. That's because the tips of the blades were going past supersonic. They were getting hit by supersonic shock waves. And, when bullets, when high-speed bullets pass through targets, a lot of times a bullet just pokes a hole. It's that supersonic shock wave that's following it that does all that explosive damage. And there's the early steam launcher called the Turbania. That's right. I think Drakeniefeld or somebody talked about that, in fact. So it was a natural follow-on. And America was not the... Our thing in America was we had the mass production capacity, the raw materials, the factories, the workforce, the organizational skills. Contrary to what a lot of people think, we were not nearly as innovative as Americans like to pat themselves on the back for being. Think about it. World War II breaks out. The Germans have got the E model Messerschmitt. The Japanese had the A6M2 Zero. They've got the fastest destroyers, which are also, and their cruisers are also the most maneuverable. They got the best torpedoes. Even the Italians made better torpedoes than we did. The Brits are the ones who are perfecting radar. And the Germans are head on. What did we have? The P-36 Hawk, a few P-40s. The best thing we had was probably the P-38, and that was basically bludgeoning its way through the sky because it had two engines on it. We really were not ahead of anybody. The one thing we made better than other people, or at least designed better, might have been small arms. But our half-tracks... Now, there was a lot to be said for the simplicity, though. Our Jeeps and our half-tracks actually had the advantage of not being too advanced. They were very basic machines. The half-track was just a 5-ton truck with the tracks replacing the rear wheel and armor plate. Underneath it was a slant 6. And whereas the Germans made these magnificent vehicles that were way over-engineered. And but they were innovating. And as we grow,
Oh yeah, but we had the Yankees.
Are we talking about the baseball team or the Northerners?
I assume the baseball team.
What is it? Was it Casablanca where Rick says the German majors brag about someday they'll be in New York or in America? He goes, well, there are certain areas in the Bronx I'd stay out of. But the Americans make good quality stuff. It was functional. It was, generally speaking, easy to maintain, and we could make a lot of it. But we weren't necessarily doing that much in the way of innovation with a lot of things. The Japanese had the superior carrier-borne fighter. In fact, the Zero was the first time that I believe that a carrier-based aircraft could actually outperform land-based aircraft. Now, they lost that edge because, we were coming out of the Depression. We weren't geared up for war. Hadn't been putting a lot of... Once we put our money and effort into it, our stuff got real good real fast. But the vaunted P-51 Mustang, arguably the finest fighter of the war, and Americans go, look what we made. We didn't make that. We built them. That was answering a British contract, and it wasn't really the airplane we knew until we put a British engine on it. So the Brits get as much credit for the fame of the Mustang as we do. And yeah, using a laminar flow wing and all the design and everything, and it was excellently engineered. But if it had just been us, we never would have built the airplane because it was built to a British order, the British specifics that we didn't put on our fighter. So it came about to fill an overseas contract. And although that takes nothing away from the incredible design team that made it in less than 4 months, But then again, it wasn't the airplane it really could be until we stuck a British engine on it. So that thing's as much British as it is American. And Mustang is a Spitfire with range. Actually, yeah, that's not an unfair analysis, but I'll tell you what made the Mustang really better than the Spitfire. The range was not inconsequential, but it was also the wide track landing gear, because they lost a lot of Spitfires in landing and takeoff accidents, and that was all too common. That's one of the things, is one of the reasons that the Hurricane was so popular, was it had a big wide track Hawker undercarriage. Now, I understand why Supermarine, why R.J. Mitchell designed the Spitfire the way he did. By putting that landing gear up to the fuselage, you don't have to have that heavy wing spar. It makes the airplane lighter and more agile. The Germans did it not only for that reason also, but also the Germans knew they would be moving from airfield to airfield. A lot of people don't realize they don't always slow their airplanes. Sometimes they towed them. And the 109, because the landing gear came out of the fuselage, it retracted up into the wings. But you could actually pull the wings off the airplane, put the tail wheel up on a trailer, and tow it. You can run, so that's one of the reasons the engine was...
Because they had fuel issues.
Yeah, and one of the reasons they mounted the engine upside down was because it made it a lot easier for field maintenance. The guys didn't need special equipment or ladders or anything to work on the airplane. You just dropped the cowling, everything you needed was right there at shoulder height. The Messerschmitt was a very easy airplane to make, and it was a very easy airplane to maintain. What it was not, remember, everything's a trade-off. What it's not is an easy airplane to land and take off. And I've heard various numbers that as much as 40% of the Messerschmitt losses were landing accidents. And you look at the narrow track gear, and even the air show Messerschmitts with expert high time pilots have had a couple of landing mishaps.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, the Spitfire did have a slightly wider gear than the 109. That's right. And the 109 also bowed out at an angle. The Spitfire's was almost straight down. But I don't think the Spitfire was quite as tricky. And I also had a more forgiving wing on it. That elliptic wing was not just aesthetically beautiful. It was an exceptional wing design. But Spitfires, again, trade-off. Spitfires are very hard to build and very hard to repair. Not to maintain, but to repair. They had that stressed metal skin and everything, so if you got bullet holes in you, the repairs could be extensive to patch the plane back up. And the big problem the Spitfire had when the war first broke out was it had rifle calibered guns. It had 8 Browning 303s, and they just learned that you can pour a lot of those bullets into an enemy bomber. That's no guarantee you're going to bring it down. So even before the Battle of Britain was over, they had a couple of them that they had 30 or 40 of them. They started mounting 20 millimeter cannons in to go with the couple of the guns, but those cannons were prone to jamming. That's why you see the Spitfires. You'll see them with clearly the large barreled cannon sticking out of the wings. You'll also notice big humps on the wings, and that's for the magazine drum, because the Spitfire wasn't designed that way. It and the 109, as they go through the war, you start seeing more bumps and bulges. If you build a model of a 109K or late model G, you have those big blisters up on the cowling, and that was for the ammo drums for the big guns they put in there. They decided they had to upgun the thing. Well, it wasn't designed for it, so you've got to put these aerodynamic blisters on them out in the desert. They have those big collar scoops and everything that filters to try and keep the sand out. And all that stuff robs you of speed and visibility and everything else. You're like, how come you don't see that stuff on the Mustang? Because the Mustang was designed with 650 calibers and 3 gas tanks. It was crammed full of gas. It didn't need to have anything added. It came out of the factory with everything it needed. Later design also. But if we learned any one thing from the 109s and the Spitfires, it was you got to have hard hitting ammo. And Americans had been putting 30 calibers with a mix of 50 calibers on a lot of their fighters. The early P-40s had a pair of 50s up in the cowling and then a pair of 30s in each wing. And somebody was like, why are we doing this? We're not shooting at biplanes anymore, and we need more hitting power. Let's put 650s on all of our fighters, 8 in the Thunderbolt. And by God, that worked, you know. And we're like, why? But you know where that bit us, Ken?
But
We go to jets, and we're like, we'll put 650 calibers on our F-86s because they work so good.
yeah. There's a story. I'm sure you know it much better than me. But there was a pilot who fired his guns, and then he pulled up, and the bullets went slower than he did, and he actually shot himself.
That was later. That was in a supersonic jet. Yeah, what happened was, I think it might have happened more than once, and I forget if it was a Skyray or an F-104. But anyway, I think it's actually happened more than once. He fired the Gatling. Now there were different causes. One of them was the F-104's problem was ingesting the gun gases and I think some spent casings. I think it was a Skyray. I forget which one it was offhand. And he actually ran into his own bullets. So what happened was he fires. Well, you know, the moment those bullets leave the barrel, they start decelerating. And the jet, of course, with the jet thrust, kept pushing along. So he fires at the target. And of course, he's got to fire an upward arc so the bullets can come down on the target. Well, he flies ahead, the bullets slow down, he flies right into him like hail. And I think he did shoot himself down. It was an F-11 Tiger, that's right. So they learned a lesson about that. And
he actually went below the bullet slightly, and then when he pulled up, the bullets shot him that way.
Well, that's where their flight paths intersected. And
yes.
Remember, he did not hit those rounds like if they were coming at him from another airplane. He chased them from behind and hit them at lower velocity, which is why things didn't end up worse than they did. But one of the things also is, remember that F-86s and these fighters operate at very high altitude, much higher than piston engine fighters. And we always had this mix of ammo, you know, incendiaries and tracers and armor piercing. So, you hit them all this stuff. Well, it turns out jet engines are a lot more rugged than piston engines. They can take a lot of abuse because all they got to do is rotate. And also the incendiaries don't work up at that high altitude, which they didn't learn till later on. So Korea cranks up. These guys are peppering these MiG-15s with 50 caliber ammo. And they're hitting them, but they're not going down. And the incendiaries aren't burning. And it's just not hitting them enough. So that's why we wound up transitioning everything over to 20 millimeter cannons. Everything's a trade-off. The 20 millimeters, you only got 4 instead of 6. Of course, you only needed 4. But then you run into problems with gun gas ingestion because they put out a lot more gas than a 50 cal. And, what do you do with the spent casings? What do you do with this? What about the recoil? So it's not a simple matter of just pulling one off and sticking another one in there. But 20 millimeters became the standard, and they still are. I mean, that's why the F-16, the F-15 all have miniguns on them, Vulcans on them in 20 millimeter. And but they learned about you ever notice that the muzzle for the Gatling gun is usually in a wing root somewhere, often on top, sticking out the side of the fuselage? That's because when we put
that's an A-10.
The A-10's a different story, but it actually it solves this problem a different way. It has the gun on the bottom and the engine's on top. They had so much trouble with gun gas ingestion, which can cause a jet engine to flame out. The Russians had the same problem. Everybody built jets did, and everybody addressed it a different way. But we started putting the gun over the shoulder because that way all the gases, they don't get anywhere near the jet intake. And they're also more in line with the pilot, which, can only help. But, and of course, when you pull a trigger on a Vulcan, I think you can adjust the rate of fire on it. But when you pull the trigger on a Vulcan, man, you're putting a lot of hurt downrange. But
I think that's why there's a piece of metal or a sheet or whatever you want to call it on the A-10 that sticks down on the side where the spent shells are sent out so that they don't actually accidentally fly up into the engine.
Does the A-10 spit out its empties? Because some aircraft recover them. They put them into a bin. Not that they're worried about saving ammo casings, although they can be reloaded. I think it's more so that they don't, damage the aircraft. I know the Abrams had a caseless round, so tankers have those special boots, and one of the reasons is for the empty shell casing coming out of the gun dropping on their ankles. And I know they had a caseless round that literally didn't have a case. It was hard made propellant that was, you threw the whole thing in the breech, fired it. When you pulled the breech open, basically just the primer nib fell out. I don't know if they still use that or not, because it had its issues like anything else. But everything's a trade-off.
A couple of guys say that the A10 keeps the casings. Then
I thought it did.
What comes out the bottom? And why do they have that piece of metal sticking down there?
It might be a gas deflector, because that gun puts out a lot of gas. I mean, you're flying through a cloud when you shoot it. But I'm sure they, also... we've all probably seen that footage of the A-10 pilot ejecting over the range. In fact, Ron Rogers, I think, covered it on his channel. And I think that might have been some kind of gun-related issue. He fired the gun and something happened and took out the engines. I forget offhand. Got to read some of these cases. I started getting conflated which one was what. Yeah, it's a gas diverter.
Okay.
It's hard if you haven't experienced to appreciate how much recoil, concussion, and gas comes out of these things. I don't know if it's true, and it probably is, but I was told that some idiot at a tank range, gunnery range, stood between two tanks, and they both happened to fire simultaneously, and was killed by the crossing concussion. And I wouldn't have trouble believing that. If you've ever been around a tank when it fires, or an artillery piece, they make the earth-shattering kaboom.
Just the shockwave coming out of my 6.5 Creedmoor,
yeah.
I wouldn't want to stand next to that.
I've had bullets fly over my head more than once, and I remember the first time I did it, and Bill was behind me shooting over me at a live fire range, and it felt like it sounded like hornets, and it felt like somebody was tapping the top of my helmet with a hammer, and it was a concussion, the shockwave, because he was only 20 feet behind me, and he was probably shooting, I don't know, 3-4 feet over my head. I was prone, he was kneeling, but we're all shooting at the same target. And I was like, that was actually an interesting experience. I don't know if they still do. They didn't when I was in, but I know in the old days they used to run those courses where they fired live machine guns over as you low crawled. And I think, that's how you harden people and get them used to that kind of stuff. Because first time you're at a live fire range and 150 guys with M16s are all lighting up the targets, it'll rattle your gums. And these are just 223, 5.56 millimeter. That M60 lights up, man, you learn to stay behind the M60. That thing puts out concussion and gas.
Yeah, I can imagine that makes a real mess.
Well, when you're behind the gun shooting it, it's not bad. You don't want to be out near the muzzle though. That 3 or 4 feet, between you and the muzzle makes all the difference in the world. And don't even get me started on the Mod Deuce. I love that gun, but man, you do not want to be around one. You don't even want to be beside the barrel. You want to be away. But
that reminds me of something. Let me ask you about something. Since you were in the Army and you had to go to the shooting range, my uncle told me about this. He said sometimes when they were at the shooting range, they had to switch with the guys who were down there looking at the targets, and then they would show the target and they would put a little thing up there showing where the bullet went. Mm-hmm. They still do that?
No. It's all electronic now. They haven't done that probably since the 40s or 50s. They've gone to electric drop down targets. Although those guys were down in a trench line, they were perfectly safe. But the targets went. But that's one of the reasons. Ken, that's one of the reasons they got away from bullseye targets.
Oh yeah, because they weren't shooting at things that looked like people. Well, the reason I brought this up is because I had this interesting thought. Because my uncle told me, he said sometimes they would just wave the thing around, like you miss.
Yeah.
Just to mess with the people. Even though they shot, really well or whatever, they'll put a thing up there and say, you missed, ha, ha, ha. And I'm thinking, if that was me, and I knew I hit the target, I'd be aiming for that stupid thing and put a bullet in it.
Well, in the movie Sergeant York, I think it is, they give him a wave that he missed, and they pull the target down, the guy and he goes, I don't think he shoots again, and wave him a minute. They pull it down, and he goes, hey, wait a minute, look, he was shooting a ragged hole.
Yeah, it's just shooting right through. Yeah, which is really, really tough to do.
Fran's mentioning what I was talking about. Yeah, it fires a combustible cartridge ammo, just the end cap remains. The tanker boots have leather straps instead of laces. Hot gases can melt laces, and laces get caught during rotation. And I knew it was something like that. When I was in the police academy, one of the guys had been a tanker, and he was still wearing his tanker boots, and it's 40 years ago, but he explained that to us. And one of my FOs was a M1 guy, and he was talking about the end caps, the only thing that falls out, which is a lot nicer than having that gigantic piece of smoldering hot brass, flying back into the turret with you. In fact, he told me a story, and Fran, you can comment on this, please. But apparently, I think it was the first Gulf War, one of the Abrams had a landmine, and it took it out of the fight. Everybody jumped out, and the back end went up in flames. And they couldn't, the way the tank or the gun were positioned, the driver couldn't get out. And they finally got the fire out. They were sure he was dead, so they finally got the gun rotated, popped the hatch, and there he is. What took you so long? Perfectly safe, which says a lot about the engineering of the Abrams. And I also understand we haven't made a new Abrams hull in like 30 years. They just remanufacture the old ones, which, why not? But
I used to know a guy who was a tank driver in an Abrams. I used to work with them. That was interesting. He said when they shoot that round and they open up the breech, he said that end cap, which is all that's left, he said that thing just comes flying around and bouncing all over the place.
Yep. The smoldering hot coffee lid.
He also told me that it's a court-martial offense that if you hold a round in your lap while you're firing, because when that thing comes out of there, because it's a caseless round, if it hits that round, it could cause it to go off. They had some mysterious tanks blow up, and they think that's what caused it.
That's a possibility. The thing is, the Abrams is a very well engineered ammo rack in the back that stays shut and has sliding doors. And I think the guy hits the lever with his leg, it pops open, he grabs a round he wants, lets go with his leg, and it slams shut. And that's extremely important because if that ammo bonnet should for some reason detonate, I believe it's got blowout plates on the top.
Yes, it does.
Everything's engineered for a reason, and the protocols exist to make use of those features. And yeah, and the time you're saving isn't worth it. But I know they had problems like that on the old Sheridan. And they had I don't know if there were breech fractures, but I think they had a couple of Sheridans blow up because either somebody did something with the ammo or it's been so long. The Sheridan mainly just stayed around to give the airborne guys some sort of armor asset, and it was supposed to, of course, they retired the last of them years ago. My brother dropped one in Panama, so they had them as recently as that. But the one of the problems, the gun is over the driver's hatch and depressed. It's very difficult to get it to, so one of the things though was that oh crap, completely lost my train of thought, what I was talking about. They wound up with this M10 Booker that just got canceled. There's $1.5 billion down the drain, but at least the Army had the good sense, to cancel it. But technically it's not a tank because everybody's calling it a light tank. Technically it was a mobile firepower. It's a support vehicle for the infantry. But the problem was this thing that was supposed to be a light tank wound up weighing like 35 tons combat ready. I'm like, Christ, you're getting up there with a T-55. And they gave them to the 101st because the airborne was supposed to have some assets. I'm like, what are we going to do with them? They're too heavy to be picked up by a helicopter. We are a helicopter division, air mobile, air assault, hoo-ah. And it didn't take them long to realize there was nothing they could do with the vehicle. You'd be better off to give it to a scout unit or something. The armor was too thin to save it from under the tank. And the gun, although a respectable gun, wasn't really big enough to take on, a modern tank. So it didn't do anything. The whole firepower concept is, I forget what the weight is, but it's got to weigh under like 8 tons to have any chance.
Frank Field says it weighs 42 tons.
Okay, 42. I mean, a frickin' Abrams weighs what, 50, 55? I mean, you're not even dealing with a light tank anymore. The hell, that's virtually a medium tank. But $1.5 billion for the program. And they've played with this concept several times before and had a couple of them that almost went into production. But light tanks haven't really been a thing since the Second World War. And even then, they were intended as scouting vehicles, reconnaissance vehicles. And the Stuart is a sweet little tank.
We already got the Bradley.
Well, again, that's not a... You know what, Ken? You'd probably be just as well off using that. The thing was, this Booker was supposed to provide some serious firepower, which although Bradley has a respectable gun on it, it's not taking on a tank.
It did. Did you see that video in Ukraine where
the one time
Bradley took out the Russian tank?
Yeah, the one time. And that probably had a lot of, everything went right on that one. You were talking about, you get into a slugfest. But I can see the Bradley's recon vehicle. The problem the Bradley has, I mean, it's fast and it's a matured platform, but it's also kind of big. In my humble opinion, a recon vehicle needs to be as small and fast and light as it can be. In fact, one of the other things, well, I'm speaking out of school here. I'm going back to the 1980s here. We did recon on motorcycles. We did, dirt bikes, in Jeeps and stuff like that, because the whole idea was get in and get out quick. And you go clonking along in an armored vehicle, a little hard to be stealthy. But
well, it was also because Bradley was funded.
Yeah. Well, you realize if they had fielded the Booker, never mind the cost of the tanks that are the armored support vehicles or whatever they call them, gun platform, firepower, mobility platform, you have to have all of the logistics for a one-off vehicle. You got to have the tracks, the wheels, the bogies, every replacement part. The Bradley's been around a long time. We have that very expensive logistics chain up and running. To get another one up and running for an entirely new vehicle, that is not a small undertaking. And,
that's right.
Look, the Bradley can carry anti-tank missiles, and they can provide some firepower support. By the way, that Bradley that went up against the tank, did he get it with a missile? He didn't get it with the gun, or did he get it with the missile? What did he get it with?
I thought it got with the gun.
I suppose if you know where you're shooting, you get the right angle on it. Abrams.
That was the impression I got from the article.
Yeah, okay, I believe. Slugo's talking about the cloned sheep. I remember her name, Dolly. You remember when they cloned Dolly the sheep?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there was a lot going on about that back then.
Gregory, I can see me on a dirt bike.
They discovered some, to go slightly off on a tangent here, they discovered something interesting about cloned animals. Even though they were born normally, they only lived as long as the cloned animal lived. In other words, their biological clock started from where the time that they were cloned at.
Ah, okay.
So if a sheep lives, I don't know how long a sheep lives, let's just say it lives 20 years, and the thing was 5 years old when they cloned it. Well, the clones only lived 15 years.
Nathan's saying they've got a new technology for PTSD where they can go into your brain and erase traumatic memories. Oh, please, any decent scotch will do that.
Wasn't that shock therapy that did that too?
Well, I found alcohol therapy is more pleasant. But Dolly, but to answer Stuart's question, yeah, we had dirt bikes in our unit, and I volunteered because I rode a motorcycle. I volunteered to be in the unit, but when I walked out, the motorcycle slowly started rolling backwards. Who says they don't have a reverse? Nice thing about those little dirt bikes was if you came to something that you couldn't, a couple of guys could pick the bike up and move it over, an obstacle and everything. It was motorcycles, you're extremely vulnerable on them, but you're also extremely mobile. Let's see.
Scotch requires daily application to keep effective.
I concur. I know it's actual therapy. I'm a little concerned about him digging around in my brain because, I mean, you may wake up and not know remember how to speak a language. Oh
Might
yeah,
work a
the
little bit
solid
too
and
well.
armored car. Yeah. Interesting little vehicle. I know a guy that used them in Africa. He actually said they were good little vehicles. He liked them. By the way, Paul had sent me something on Photoscope. Those Aurora models that had. Steve, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
I'm listening.
Oh, okay.
I'm being educated.
The A10 is up. Well, the A10, if it is outdated, it certainly earned it. But the Photoscope that Aurora made, Paula pointed out they found a hole. I think, Paul, to answer your question you mentioned earlier in the email, I believe kids are supposed to put a flashlight up to it to light up the inside. I don't think it came with lights that went in it. Does that sound right, Steve?
Yeah, it didn't come with lights.
Yeah. So you could
And
just
that
put a
was
flash.
sort of an issue.
Yeah. But you were supposed to stick a flashlight into the hole they put in there, and then you could quote unquote see it.
Somehow you were supposed to, illuminate it, and it didn't have any clear, part to admit any light into, like in the submarine, like in the hull.
Oh, okay. Well, that made a whole bunch of sense. That just sounds like the typical Aurora, throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
Well, you got to talk to Keeler about that when they told him to go up to Groton and take a picture of the inside of a submarine.
What?
Yeah. He looked at him like they were nuts. And they said, no, this is going to be big.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, sure, okay.
I remember when those things came out, seeing one on the shelf, and I think it was at Crouch Rex All Drugs. They seem to carry more Aurora kits than anybody else in town. And I saw the Photoscope thing, and I think they were more expensive too. And I saw the Photoscope. Yeah, I saw the Photoscope thing, and even I, as like a 12-year-old, knew that this is just a gimmick, And,
yeah, it's not a good idea. Well, every time there's like a lull in sales, and it goes through a sort of a sine wave of sales. They think of, let's do something interesting, like Aurora. Revell decided to do those electronic kits, and the motorcycle and the police car and the ambulance, and you put them on a base and you push buttons and lights came on and they made siren sounds and stuff. They were never anything that sold big.
No, because even kids know when it's just a gimmick. It's becoming a toy. If I want a toy police car, I'll buy a toy police car.
Not what they wanted. I mean, Meanwhile, did you see the video that the guy from England who does videos, Moss, whatever his name is, he did a video. It's on YouTube. It put it up, I think, yesterday. The 10 most rare Revell kits.
This sounds familiar. I think I saw it in my feed. I don't think I've watched it yet. I mean, I'm sure your XLS is up there.
No.
No?
The 10th one was the the Allison engine.
Really?
Even though it's been repopped. And he talks about things that have been repopped, but, he's talking about from the beginning. And the second one was the Jeep. The number 9 was the Jeep and trailer.
You got that recently.
Yeah, I got that. And the power plant was on there. And a bunch of the planes were on. It's a pretty interesting video.
Well, I used to think until I started working on this big C-57D that if I was going to manufacture kits, one thing I would do is make big ones because they're just cool because they're big. And the more I realize you get above 1/32 scale with a single engine airplane, 1/48 scale with a multi-engine airplane, or 1/72 scale with something like the B-52, size starts creating some pretty distinct issues with keeping the shape looking right, because it's just plastic. It'll sag under its own weight. The Felixstowe was a classic example. It actually came with these little sawhorses that you put under the floats, because the wings would sag if you didn't. And it started me to wondering about, maybe there is a size limitation to plastic kit models that we should give more consideration to. Making something big just to make it big. I mean, I see a charm in that, to be sure, but I see a whole bunch of downside too. I saw that big B-52, I think this was the monogram kit at one of the Jax cons. The guy did beautiful work on it. I was most envious. And of course the Vietnam camouflage paint scheme. And I was thinking where does he put it? I mean, how do you transport it?
What do you do with these giant kits? Where do you put them?
Well, Monica and I have already been talking about that with the C-57D. It's not coming in the house. It's too big to hang in the garage. I don't even know if I have room in the Tarbis for it. I mean, I could hang them in the ceiling, but I'd have to duck to walk under it.
Why don't you put it out on the lawn?
Ah!
Scare the neighbors. Light it up at night.
That actually would look cool on top of my mailbox. Have to coat it in epoxy to protect it, but
play music. Ooh,
And did you see that video the gentleman put out? He does 3D animated representations of the inside of spaceships, and
yes,
and he does the 15-20 minute walkthrough of the C-57D. I'm not 100% sure some of his colors are right. They may be. I think he's actually. I don't want to. I mean, the work he put into it, I don't want to second guessing. But I actually used that for part of the paint guide, and he's got all the screens working and everything. But the last few minutes of it, when the hatch opens up and what's supposed to be the id comes floating through and illuminating everything with those tonalities, I actually found it a little creepy. I was like, that's good, when you can make something like that and make someone the hair on the back of someone's neck come up. I swear, Forbidden Planet works on so many levels, especially for a movie made when it changed science fiction forever. And that's why I wanted to do this.
And it's one movie that should never be remade.
It's funny. I was just talking about that with my wife, I think, this morning. And people are like, I wouldn't remake The Thing because the original was good and the one with Kurt Russell was good. So I'm like, it doesn't need to be remade. Them could be remade with better special effects. I think that was still a good movie. I'm not used to having that much agency in actors in a monster movie. We won't worry about the kaiju flicks because they have been raided to death. Part of me thinks I know exactly what you mean, but another part of me wants to remake it, just give it a more modern aesthetic. But at the same time, it's almost like a little bit of a heresy.
It's like perfect. It really is.
And you know what you could do? You make a sequel.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought.
What, that the robot has Mobius's genes in it and gets to Earth and goes crazy?
Oh,
what?
Come on.
Hold on,
Science
Steve.
fiction.
Hold on. You're on to something. No. What if Mobius's id was able to hide out in the robot? Because the Krell were working on technology to release it from any instrumentality. What if since Mobius had been in the machine, the technology had worked on him and he was able to transplant himself into the machine. And his drive is to go back to Krell even though the planet's destroyed. And maybe the ship, maybe if you really want to go dark, maybe he kills everyone on the ship and steals it, and so they find it a century later.
Alien with a robot.
And then what?
Then they have to fight it again.
One of the reasons
lands on Earth.
One of the reasons Forbidden Planet was so successful is what Max just said. It was good science fiction because it made you think. Science fiction up to that point before was just monsters from space destroying things and how we're going to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's wrong with that?
It's boring. So what? I mean, yeah, he's going to ravage Tokyo again. Okay, whoopee.
Okay. Ken, that gives me. I was just thinking the other day.
No, you're missing something, Ken. The robot comes to Earth, threatens humanity, and Godzilla has to fight it to save humankind. So
Well, that went off the rails in a hurry.
So there.
It doesn't make you think.
Forbidden Planet, Shakespeare in
Science
space.
fiction makes you think.
Shakespeare.
Science fiction is what if? What if we did this different? Or what if this happened differently? Or what if this occurred?
What
How would it
is?
affect society? How would it affect we think? How would we live? Go ahead.
Usually Trey says the 1/32 scale Gotha gobbled up huge amount of it in my display area. Yeah, that's a thing. It's exactly that. Is these beautiful big biplanes by Wingnut Wings? You basically have to have a dedicated room, and maybe we should rent a place and have a home for wayward models.
Toy Story plastic.
Yeah.
There you go, Max. There's another movie for you.
Now, see, they should do Toy Story with models.
Oh yeah.
Like talking car models, you know, like cars from cars and,
Yeah.
and planes from planes and Godzillas and
Wait a minute,
you know,
Steve.
they're-
You don't think that happens when you go to sleep?
well, I always wondered what those sounds were coming from the basement, but
In Steve's case, he better hope it doesn't happen. He's got
yeah,
so many,
exactly.
he's got so many things down there that could take over the whole neighborhood.
Why do you think as a kid I was so freaked out to stay with my friends and collect all those freaking Aurora models staring down at us? I know when I go to sleep they're going to crawl up on the bed and attack me. Okay, I don't know if the camera's gotten blurry again or it's my eyesight.
Island of
Sure,
Misfit models. It's slightly blurry. Oh, interesting. But Disney Studios was contracted to do the id monster
rotoscoping, yeah.
SFX on Forbidden
Yeah,
Planet.
they're the ones who did it.
They did the rotoscoping, yeah.
Oh.
Disney did it.
And it actually has that Disney look. And yeah, well, when Disney tries to make a sci-fi movie, you end up with a black hole, which is I wasn't really that enamored with, but the ending of it, I was, you know, you're like, what? Where'd they go?
Yeah.
What the heck is all this?
Well, let me put it to you this way, and a lot of people are going to not be happy with me saying this, but Interstellar was great up until the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. This camera's having some issues.
Oh, where he went inside the black hole?
No, where he's communicating with her, yeah, with the watch and behind the bookshelf, and no, sorry.
Well, what happened? Okay, the premise there.
No.
is that-
I know the premise. I know what happened. It ruined the movie for me. Ruined the movie.
Yeah, I can see I can see your point there, because to be able to survive
Yeah, because
the
up to that point,
event horizon, it was you would spaghettify. You would just be stretched in a great big long thin string.
yeah, I mean, up to that, the science worked, and then it went off into Never Neverland.
Well, you're making the assumption that he survived. For all we know, he was, you know, in heaven afterwards after being turned into spaghetti.
So Sluggo says, why can't you stream Ken and Steve into the videos?
We did that before and the computer crashed. Remember?
Yeah, because Max was using this really great software.
Hey.
But now that he's dedicated to this, he can afford to buy, better software.
No, Ken, that would have been when he was still flying.
Well, he's dedicating more to the YouTube channel, right? He's wanting to make it better, so we can get better software, so that we wouldn't have to talk through. That way, we wouldn't have to talk through a communicator.
What is he doing now? He's rebuilding the computer.
The camera, the other camera was out of focus, so I'm using the one that's built in now. Hey, it was good enough for Captain Kirk. It's good enough for me.
Yeah, but Captain Kirk had staff. He had engineering.
It's Scotty. Here, fix it.
I still say the best part in any of the Star Trek movies is the one where they come to Earth to save the whales, and they go to the computer store, and
Yeah.
somebody picks up the mouse and talks into it, and it doesn't do anything, and he's like, "Computer."
Yeah.
That was hysterical.
No. Okay, they went to this company that they were going to sell clear aluminum to, and
Right.
he sat down in front of the computer and started talking to it. And the guy said, "No, you have to use the mouse." So he picks the mouse up and starts talking to the mouse.
Computer. He goes,
Yeah, that was
keyboard, how
great.
quaint.
That's hysterical.
Which, by the way, quick side note, they have just announced the development of, drum roll please, transparent aluminum.
Transparent aluminum.
Yep. So clearly that was a little foreshadowing there.
Thank you, Scotty.
Yeah. Like he said, told them it'd take years to work out the matrix.
Nathan says he can't tell how many bars and clubs in Phoenix have gone out of business because people just don't go out anymore. Of course not. It's hotter than the surface of the sun there. Why would anybody leave their house?
So the C57D decals have, placement sheet and everything and all the stuff. The one thing they don't have is my 3 rings for the floor. And
there was also a really good line from that same movie too, when Kirk and the crew were walking out of the Klingon ship. When they just landed in the park. They said, "Okay, everybody remember
where we parked."
Yeah.
I do recall that.
Okay, somebody's got a sense of humor.
Well, you need a little levity in there. But
Reality is far scarier than the fantasy fiction.
yeah. Oh yeah, Scotty was a D-Day. That's right. He was the Canadian Forces.
She was.
And
somebody just said that they saw a video about his participation in that.
Yes, there was a video. It was on YouTube.
It's funny. We were just doing the D-Day build and everything. And I swear to God, we did about the only thing out there that was on D-Day. I didn't see anything in the news or the news feeds. One thing about a parachute jump, memorial jump. But we're getting to that point that now that most of the veterans have passed, World War II is starting to slowly turn into, World War I and slide away like the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. And the sad part is that there are so many lessons in just life. I mean, world affairs and everything else to be learned from that era in history. And we're getting generations who look at World War II the same way we grew up thinking of the Revolutionary War. It's ancient history. And it only defined the world we live in to this day.
To your point, a few years ago when I took my kids to Cape Canaveral to the, to that park we went to, Max, at Cape Canaveral.
Mm-hmm.
Where they got all the space stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I took my kids there, and we went down and we saw the Saturn V, that they still have on display down there, and it's huge, and they had all that stuff. Okay, so
yeah.
I'm walking around, and I'm talking to my kids, and they're not terribly interested, and it occurred to me, to them, this is ancient history.
Mm-hmm.
This is like dinosaur stuff.
Yeah.
But we lived through it. We experienced that. We went through it.
And only a handful of
with everybody
moonwalkers are still alive. Aldrin's in his 90s. And I think Aldrin, Scott, Duke, there might be a couple. I think there's a couple more, but
Lovell?
yeah. Well, Lovell never walked.
Lovell?
He never walked.
Oh.
Well, although he's one of only 3 people that made the trip twice. And the other 2 are gone. Cernan and Young, they both went twice. But they both passed now. And so Lovell is the last one to go twice. But maybe one of them will be alive if we go, in time to see us go back. It'll be something, wouldn't it? But as much as I grew up with the space program, so of course that stuff is just sort of tattooed to the inside of my heart. And as much as I love the program, I'll be the first one to admit I hope it's private sector when we go back, because the government's just got too many other things to deal with, and I don't, we don't get political here, but there are better places to put the money. We need to. Elon is shooting up rockets every other day for a fraction of the cost that NASA and UAL were doing. If we go back to the moon and it's private sector, it might be sustainable, affordable, or certainly be cheaper. And personally, I think you could make good. You know, they've already selling flights into space for well-heeled tourists who can afford it. Can you imagine what people would pay to spend a week on the moon?
Well, but if that were the case, the Star Wars hotel would have done much better.
Yeah, I don't know that. Okay, there's a thought in that. But this is a real space hotel.
Yeah, it's real. It's much different when it's real.
But
Oh, okay.
I just saw they just had a probe. You know, that probe they just sent to the moon crashed. It didn't land. It didn't soft land.
Yeah, the Japanese probe. That's a shame. That's the second time that's happened to them.
Look at the bright side. At least they didn't have an astronaut in it. I saw that documentary movie, Countdown. Yeah. I know the Russians still have 3 of them up there waiting to come back. Every week they just shoot them a rocket full of vodka and borscht. Yeah, Lemur Crazy. We saw that. The Ukrainians did that. Man, that drone strike was right out of a James Bond movie.
That, you know what was clever about that? You go back in time, okay? Remember when Lionel made the Minuteman missile car?
Yep, and the military train.
That's basically what they just did. They took a container that the roof opened and the drones flew out and bombed. Just they modernized the old toy.
One of my military friends said that, now we're going through every container in the U.S. military, making sure those roofs are just roofs.
Yeah. Now, was that container inside Russia, or was it were they launched from Ukraine?
No, they were inside Russia.
Katy Perry is no Buzz Aldrin.
The roof opened, it kind of parted, and they flew out and went to their mission.
Katie went into space in search of human love. I would go into space in search of freaking air.
Here you go. Roy, Japan needs to have Tamiya take over the space program. Trey, last transmission from the Japanese lunar probe, Banzai.
Tomorrowland, still my favorite land from Disney.
What?
He's talking about Tomorrowland is now the
interesting about Tomorrowland. When I went through it, it must have been at least 30 years ago, at least, maybe more. The last one, they had, where they showed the modern home, and the wife sitting there with a computer terminal in front of her, and she pushes a button and things come up on the screen. That terminal was the same one that I worked on a few years before.
There you go.
And that terminal is now, by today's standards, dinosaur, because it only displayed text, and it needed a computer to hook up to that was the size of a refrigerator.
But all the computers were the size of refrigerators then, Ken.
I guess they modernized it now. I guess she's got a laptop now. I don't know. I
was just, as a kid, enamored with the idea. We lived in the future because you could get on a jet, a swept-wing jet, and fly eastern from Florida all the way to Los Angeles, then get on a helicopter and fly from LAX to Anaheim, and then land at a helipad beside Tomorrowland aboard a rocket. We lived in the future.
Yep. And they had a plastic house.
Yep.
Well, they got 3D printed houses now. pretty much the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Problem with
Yeah.
with Tomorrowland was they could never keep up with what was being done in reality, so they had a hard time keeping ahead of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because I mean,
Well, it was a time of great
everybody's-
invention.
Everybody's got a Dick Tracy watch now.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, think
Look
about
at it
it.
this way: our phone has more computing power than the Apollo 13
That's
computers.
that's
Oh,
what
by
I was just that's what I
far.
was just thinking about that. And
Thousands of times more powerful than that computer.
Yeah.
well, think about this. When Star Trek came on in the 60s, they definitely foresaw the cell phone, but it was 3 different devices. It was the communicator and the tricorder. You know, if they put a phaser in this cell phone, we'd have 3 of them in one. You'd have your Explorer set right here. But a cell phone phaser. Okay, that's what I want on the next iteration of the Galaxy. and a deflector shield. I want a deflector shield built into it. So
Yeah, a personal deflector shield.
like they had in
Yeah,
Dune.
I want that around my car.
Now here's an interesting piece of science fiction to think about. Okay, personal deflector shield. Think about this: how it would radically change humanity. For once, nobody can be killed by somebody else.
And the girls who didn't want you to have sex with them could turn it on and you'd be screwed.
In more ways than one. Yes. So.
How did don't you know? I don't even know how we got there.
You would there'd be no neighborhoods that you'd be afraid to go into now because nobody could hurt you.
Well, Ken, I think that would do for the human survival skill what living in cul-de-sacs and gated communities did. It makes you naive and foolish. You think you're safe when you're not.
But you would be because the shield would protect you from any projectile and gas.
Don Lee has a wonderful comment. The Enterprise didn't need to rely on cell towers.
Fair, true that.
Now, how do you know they didn't have relay stations throughout space for relay?
Oh, there may have been a space buoy every few light years, but yeah, Kirk could call the Enterprise without a booster signal.
Yep.
So also, like you,
Yes, Captain.
you,
Scotty here, Captain.
you couldn't call Starfleet from your communicator with that. You could only do that from the ship.
Ah,
Well, there's another interesting point. Did you notice the communicator
McCoy here.
rundown?
the what?
The communicator's battery never runs out of power.
Oh, yeah.
Why would it run out when you could put such huge amounts of energy inside of a phaser that it's the same size?
Yeah, I'm guessing there was a piece of atomic material in there somewhere.
Enterprise. Spock here.
Yeah.
Enterprise. Spock here.
You know what's probably going to be the next, in my opinion, the next big technological leap is the ability to be able to store a high amount of energy in a dense area, denser than gasoline.
Yeah, like better
Like a
batteries.
Tesla battery.
Yeah.
Test
Yes, Captain.
energy dense as gasoline. When they develop that technology, that will change a lot of things. It'll definitely change transportation. You know how we wanted our flying car?
Yeah.
Guess what? All it takes is energy.
Yeah, Ken, it only takes energy. That's like saying all it takes to be rich is money.
Mm-hmm.
Money is
Sank her in a tunnel.
I was playing with this thing and accidentally turned it off.
Oh, well, there you go. That'll do it.
And I wonder what happens if I push this button. But,
McCoy here.
Don't push the big red one.
Yeah,
Scotty here, Captain. Yes, Captain.
we got wrong.
Enterprise. Spock here.
there's different recordings in there. I don't know how to get to them.
Wouldn't you you trying to do?
Well, there's different recordings, and it's only showing that it keeps going to the same ones.
Enterprise. Spock here.
You playing with the communicator?
Yeah, I'm playing with the communicator.
Don't push the self-destruct button.
Again.
Enterprise. Spock here.
He's going to push it, and the phaser's going to get him. And he doesn't even have a red shirt on.
Got the phaser up here. Red shirt's in the closet. uh,
When the house blows up, they'll find the shirt.
what happened? There was a red shirt here. I wonder if
Tommy says, I wonder what happens if I push this button.
Yeah.
That was someone's last words.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, Sluggo's got it. I want a beanie and Cecil cap that the propeller spins automatically.
Put on your red shirt, Max.
Maybe next week. Okay. Real quick. Forgot to mention. I'll open this up. This is one of those things that question I kept at. Okay, build schedule. We just finished the D-Day build. The next build is the Dream Car build.
Ooh.
And it's due at the end of July, so that gives you 7 weeks to make your dream car.
Okie dokie.
So, dream car build, end of July. That's the next
I just
build.
wanted to comment to the Blue Troopers. Yesterday, I happened to make a visit for a meeting up to Atlantis Models. And they showed me their new expansion of their facility. And they have now all of their molds under one roof and have 3 molding machines so that they truly will be making everything in the United States.
All right. Excellent. And now they'll have control over their operation.
Yes,
How'd they get-
they've got, huh?
I was going to say, how'd they get the mold? Yeah, how'd they get the molds out of China?
Oh, the molds were in the United States.
They only have a few molds in China.
When they bought the molds after the auction, they were all in Chicago where Hobbyco was. So
okay.
they had a molder in Chicago that when they wanted to run those molds, they left them there and he would use. And then they had a bunch of them that were shipped to their New York facility. But most of them were in Chicago. So they got extra warehousing space. They purchased 3 molding machines and had all the molds brought to New York, and they were in the process of racking the new warehouse space and putting all the molds up. And I got to see them all, and it was quite impressive. So they'll be able to manufacture stuff all under their own control now.
That's great.
So that's going to make it much easier, especially since if there's tariffs, their kits will be able to be much less retail-wise because they're all made in the United States and aren't subjected to tariffs.
All right. Well, take the win on that one.
And they got a lot of new stuff that they're going to be making that has not been finalized yet. We were working on that yesterday. But there's going to be some really cool stuff coming out from them over the next 18 months.
Looking forward to it. Well, guys, it's 9 o'clock. It's that time.
It is. And both of my daughters just arrived, so I want to go say hi to them.
Well, say bye-bye, Ken, and you can go Aviator bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Ken.
Bye,
Oh,
Ken.
come on. You're kicking me out already?
You said you want to go say hi to daughters. We're going to shut down. I thought you say bye-bye to Glue Troopers, and then you can go. I'll see you
You're
tomorrow.
going to shut down now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to see you tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to shut down.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Looking forward to seeing the present. Oh, you should take pictures or videos or whatever.
Sure.
Happy birthday, Ben.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Max.
Oh,
Appreciate
my
that.
pleasure. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Well,
Yeah, it'd be great.
I was the one who said that first.
But you're not coming.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
not
get the
coming.
props because I'm not coming.
There you go. See, you know how it works.
Yeah, the 1,200 miles each way was just not far enough in Ken's mind for me not to come.
There you go.
What
Well,
do you mean? It's only like about 800 miles. It's not that far.
Only.
Come on.
If you have a plane,
Only.
I do it
All
twice
right.
a year.
Well, guys, you
that's
can have
true.
this. You girls
Then
can
I
have
can
this
come out
discussion
and see
later.
you.
I'm going to say
Another
bye-bye
3
to
hours.
everybody.
That's
Ugh.
true. Yeah. Okay, guys.
All right.
I'll see you in August.
Okay, that sounds good.
All
Okay,
right,
guys, I'm gonna go
everybody.
ahead and say good night.
Good night.
Thank you for the happy birthday wishes. I appreciate it. I really do. I'm just happy that I made it to 70, and both my parents are still alive. So I'm kind of thinking I'll probably still get another 20 out of it. So
Let's keep
Anyway,
a good thought.
thank you. And thanks, guys, and I hope you all have a really good weekend. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.
All right, Ken. Well,
We
Steve.
didn't even get to talk. We didn't even get to talk about the coolest tool. But okay, we can do that next time.
Well, that's to be for next week then.
There
All
you go.
right. That's what you get for not keeping control of the conversation.
Well, sometimes it's better to listen.
All right. Well, guys, that's it for tonight. Take care of yourselves. We should have the live stream Saturday night regular time next week. Take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.
The box is staring me right in the eye. A model kit with wings that want to fly. The couch is calling with a lazy embrace. Decisions, decisions, I'm stuck in this place. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or a rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? Instructions whisper, take me slow, but the TV's glow says, let it go. Glue and paint or popcorn in hand, I'm caught between two promised lands. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or a rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or a rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? One's a masterpiece, the other's a haze. One's forever, the other's a phase. But oh, the couch, it pulls me down. The kid just waits, it never frowns. Build it up or zone right out. Plastic dreams or a rerun bout. Hands are itching, remotes in sight. Will I craft or binge tonight? Will I craft or binge tonight? flicker on the screen, it's a late night show. A spaceman lands where a strange wind blows. The black and white feels like home to me. A time machine through the static I see. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. Now I'm here with the glow in my eyes. The channel changes, but the feeling survives. The heroes are still young, but I have aged. Yet I still love planets made of paper mache. Driving nights with the stars above. Old tin speakers and a young man's love. Popcorn dreams in a two-tone car. Youth felt endless under every star. The reel keeps spinning, but the years are gone. The spaceman fades, but the dream lives on. Late night TV in a quiet room, but my heart still dances to the same old tune. Ooh. The clock ticks loud as the credits roll, but these memories light up my soul. A middle-aged man with a younger heart. I can't wait for the next flick to start. The clock ticks loud as the credits roll, but these memories light up my soul. A middle-aged man with a younger heart. I can't wait for the next flick to start.
There's a tank on the table, missing a wheel. A spaceship half painted, how does that feel? The pieces are scattered like a puzzle unsolved. My ambition's a crime, but I've never evolved. Glue it together, or leave it undone. These model kids laugh while I try to have fun. The instructions are cryptic, the parts are a mess. Why do I start more when I can't finish less? A pirate ship's mast is leaning to the side. A car from the 60s has no seats inside. I swore I'd complete them, I gave it my vow. But my shelf of shame's growing, it's mocking me now. Glue it together.